Hi, everybody. My name is Keith, and I'm an alcoholic. And I have a tremendous enthusiasm for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm from New York. But I'm really from Bakersfield. Transplanted to San Jose, to Canada, to Los Angeles, to St. Louis, to Chicago, to New York. Things change when you get sober sometimes. I had 62 jobs before I got sober, and I've had 22 since I've been sober. So Sally and I got married very young. She was 16 and I was 18. And we had 2 children in 21 months, Santiago. We knew what the hell we were doing. I found out what we were doing, what caused it, and we almost quit for a while. We were young and going to San Jose State at the time, and gee, we just didn't have 2 dimes to rub together ever, and but life was good. Seemed like life was good. And we've been married 37 years come January 23rd of this next year, and it's because of thank you, and it's because of her drive and desire and determination for us to stay married the first 18 years, and because of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon because of the last 18 years. And I truly believe that. I only have 20 minutes to tell you my story, so I have to talk twice as fast as her. She gets 40 minutes. And I really believe that the message that I have is what has happened to me, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. And that message, I could talk for 20 hours, as we all could, about our lives. But I got to tell you that I drank from the age 13 to age 38, and I drank everything I could get a hold of, any time that I could get a hold of it. I loved alcohol. Because when I first came around in this world, and I became able to communicate, like about in kindergarten, I felt different. I felt different from the day I was born, I believe. And in kindergarten, I felt different. In 1st grade, and 6th grade, and 9th grade, and 12th grade. And, I'm 56 years old, and I still feel different, But at least I have a way to go today, and I know what to do about it. But when I was in kindergarten, the teacher, she came to me one day, and she says, Keithy, dang, I hated that. I'm a man, and I'm Keith, I'm in kindergarten. She says, Keithy, she says, you have to recite Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star at the Easter pageant. And I said, Mrs. Fullerton, you don't understand. I use those alcoholic words, you don't understand. And I'm in kindergarten. I says, you don't understand, I can't do that. And the reason I knew I couldn't do it is because I knew I couldn't do it perfect. And that's true alcoholism right then and there, right from the get-go, And she says, but you have to. So what did I do? I made a decision. And the decision was I went home and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced and I practiced until when that Easter pageant came about, I got up there and I said, Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder where you are to perfection. And God, it was magnificent. Because of my alcoholic feelings and emotions, what did I get? I got approval. God, we alcoholics need approval so desperately. And I got approval. And I've been seeking approval ever since. And I hope somebody comes up after the talk and says, gee, you gave a great talk, because I really need it. I had a great childhood. My dad was a fantastic man. And on November 11th, 1938, we marched in the Armistice Day Parade in Bakersfield, California. And I marched with him, and I thought it was fantastic. And that afternoon, they brought him home. My mom thought he was drunk, but he wasn't. He had a tumor on the inside of his brain. And 16 days later, I was laying in bed, and I was saying my prayers, because I was going to Christian Science Sunday School, and I believed in God and Jesus and Mary Baker Eddy and all those good things, and I had all my little gold stars for being a good Christian Science student. And I was saying my prayers, and my aunt walked in just as I ended saying my prayers, and she said, my dad had just passed away. And I had no idea that he was that sick. And I made a decision then that I would never ever trust God or religion from that day forward. And I looked up at the ceiling of that bedroom and I says, God, you're a dirty SOB. And I called him that name. And I turned him off, and I have never been back to church since. And my message today, in the short time that I have to talk, is that we alcoholics have a disease called alcoholism, I believe. And the disease is threefold. It's physical. And it most assuredly is physical, that's for sure. Because when I take a drink, I get drunk. Not a drink sometimes. Sometimes it takes 3 or 10 or 50. But when we drink, something physically happens to us, happened to me. And it's also emotional. I really believe that the disease that I have is more emotional than it is physical, because that's the damaging part. I could never feel comfortable because of my emotions. I never felt perfect, which I wanted to feel so badly. I never felt like I was in the right place at the right time. I never felt that I could ever get successful in anything I ever did, because it seemed like I climbed up that ladder of success about 75% of the way and I failed. And yet I was making it. I did it for a while. I was doing magnificent things for a while, 75% of the time, and then I would fail. I could never, ever make it. And I never made it till I got to this program, 100%. And anything I ever attempted to do, because of my emotions, my physical makeup, just didn't allow me to function on a continuing basis. Then the real message I think that I received from this program is that the third part of the disease is that we must believe in a power greater than ourselves. It's the spiritual aspect of the disease that we have that we fail to come in contact with. Some of us did come in contact. Some of us were devout Catholics and devout Christian Science, devout Christians and everything, but still couldn't find that contact with a power greater than ourselves that we seem to find in this program if we stick around long enough. And consequently, I from age 9 to age 13, I tried to become a man. At age 13, my mother had 9 sisters and 4 brothers, all Swedes, and half of them died of alcoholism. And 2 of my aunts were married into an Italian family that had 9 brothers, and half of them died of alcoholism. And consequently, we had these great, fantastic parties at Christmas and New Year's, and it was unbelievable. And Santa Claus came at 8 o'clock every Christmas Eve, and I believed in Santa Claus till I was 21. He brought me that present, that I always wanted. And I'm 13, and I got acne on my face so bad it's pussy, and God, I hated myself. And the girls tried to get to dance with me at this Christmas Eve party, and my cousins, and I just shied away from them. I hated girls because I thought the pus would run off them. They got too close to them, I mean, I had a tremendously horrible feeling about me, no self-worth whatsoever. And I noticed that everybody was having a good time, and I reached in and I stole a bottle of VO, and I went in the back closet, and I took that first drink of pure whiskey. And it got, down to here, and I gagged, and I spit that up, and it was terrible. God, it just tasted terrible. Until a little bit trickled down about here, And I thought, well, I'll try another, and I tried another one, and it tasted better. It got down about here, Then the third one just went boom, and trickled up the back of my neck and made my hair feel good and my toenails feel good, and everything in between. And I became a man instantly. And I went out there and learned how to jitterbug that night, My face became as smooth as a baby's fanny. I became Clark Gable. I became all the things, that I always wanted to be. And so consequently, I drank from age 13 to 38 till it damn near killed me. In the last 2 or 3 years I drank 20 to 40 half quarts of beer a day and a fifth of scotch or whiskey if I could steal enough money to get it. And that's the truth, because I didn't have any money. And I had to steal, and I had to lie, and I had to cheat in order to function. In the last 2 years, I did not think I was an alcoholic. I had no idea that I had a disease called alcoholism. All I thought that God or life had just been nasty to me, and I was one of those people that would never ever make it. I was one of those people that would never ever become successful. And drinking, my God, that was the only thing that made me feel comfortable. I mean, the only thing that made me seem like I could function was drinking. So don't tell me that I can't drink. Don't tell me that I'm an alcoholic. I mean, that's part of my life. That's part of my existence. It's been since I was 13. You know, drinking is part of life. And I never realized, that I was an alcoholic till I finally realized I was an alcoholic. And I tell you, this program is a fantastic program because during the 25 years that I did drink, like I said, I did become successful, but only to a point where I became unsuccessful. I was student body president of my high school, which is a little bit of success. I got a football scholarship to Stanford, and I had to run away from there because they all had $100 bills in their pockets and had doctors for their dads, and I had no dad, and I had a mom that worked in the family service laundry in Bakersfield. And went back to junior college, and thank God I did, because that's where I met her. She was bobbing along outside of East Bakersfield High School one day on the lawn, and she's pretty well endowed, and she looked pretty good. I said, "Who is she?" And they said, "That's Sally Peters. She just moved here from Oklahoma." I said, "I'm going to marry her, because she looked good, And us alcoholics, anything worth marrying is worth marrying to excess, Anything worth doing is worth doing to excess, and I liked what I saw, and 4 months later we married, Isn't that the way you're supposed to do it? And I went to high school, and I went to college, and I graduated from college, and I played 5 years of professional football from 5 different teams, no success involved. And I said I've had 62 jobs before I got here, and I had jobs where I was successful, and then I would fail, and I was successful, and I would fail. My life was just a total turmoil until we were living in Woodland Hills, California, and one day she said that she had made an appointment with the National Council on Alcoholism. And I thought, my God, I'm not that bad. And that morning I had a tremendous hangover. I don't know if you remember those tremendous hangovers, but she had a habit of yelling and screaming. I don't know, some wives maybe didn't do that, but she used to say, "You got a backbone like a jellyfish, Where's your willpower?" And Jesus, I just didn't want to hear that morning. So I said, "Don't yell, don't scream, I'll do anything." She said, "Well, get in that car and we're going down to the National Council of Alcoholism." I said, I'll go. And I went down there and listened to a man for 1 hour tell me his dreary AA story. He chased his mother with a butcher knife and wanted to kill her. My God, I loved my mother. I'm not an alcoholic like him. I just have a problem that I can't become successful. So I left there with 3 phone numbers, AA members, and I gave them to her because I didn't want them. And I drank for 9 more months. And I drank 24 hours a day if I could have. Naturally, we can't, But I just drank and drank and drank and drank and drank. And on July 20th, 1967, I woke up one morning, and I couldn't even walk. I crawled to the porcelain altar, and I lifted up the wooden seat, and I was going, I was giving it my best, man, I used to be proud of myself when I could really vomit good, And I looked down on the porcelain of that toilet, and there was 3922636. She knew where I was coming from and where I was going, right? And she hadn't even been to Al-Anon yet. And I looked down there and I said, my God, maybe I better call A&A. And I went in and I dialed that number, and that number, the man answered, and he said, "Do you think you have a drinking problem?" And I started bawling like a baby on the phone. He says, "Yep, you got a drinking problem." And he didn't even know how big I was, at the time. But big men do cry, because I cried a lot. And he came out and made a 12-step call on me, and I haven't had a drink since that date. I've been going to Alcoholics Anonymous ever since. And I've been going with a feverish attitude that this is the place that I want to be. This is the place that's going to make me function as a human being. And, I can't tell you that life has been perfect ever since, because life isn't perfect. I think that the message that I have to tell you is that, number one, we get restored to normal living. But let me tell you about normal living. Normal living means that you're not a sick person or a well person. Normal living does not mean that you're a good person or a bad person. Normal living means that you're both. Normal living to me, I found out, is that life goes on. There's such things as failure. There's such things as disease. There's such things as death. There's such things as everything that life encompasses. But the thing that I most assuredly have learned from the people that have come before me, the old-timers, the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, the things that I've learned from all of that is that I can live comfortable as a normal person. And I never knew that before I got here, because I always thought I had to be perfect. I had to be first string. I had to say Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to perfection before I ever had a drink. I had to be number one, no matter what I did. And consequently, nobody can be number one. Nobody can be perfect on a continuing basis. You might get perfect for a couple of seconds, but that's about as long as perfection lasts. And so consequently, I have learned since I've been in this program that I can live comfortable in adversity. I have become an architect in adversity, as we all do if we stick around here long enough and listen to the sponsors and listen to the old-timers and practice these principles in all our affairs and do all the things that make us comfortable. Do the things that make us comfortable, and that's going to meetings. Meetings. That's the answer. Identifying. Being in a place where you can hear people discuss things that make your emotions comfortable to live with. Those are the things that I found out that have caused me to live in adversity, because I have been in adverse situations. My daughter, for 8 years, tried to destroy herself in this program, this disease. She was in an auto accident, had half her face torn off. She still can't feel anything or taste anything from this side of her face. Got a call, and she had put a gun in her belly and pulled the trigger and tried to commit suicide. And I got to the hospital, and I said, Doctor, how is she? And he had a smile on his face, and he said, she's all right. She had gained so much weight that the bullet went in and just went through the fatty tissue and didn't hurt her. I call that fate. I have a son that tried to destroy himself with drugs. Went home one day, and my whole house was shot up with bullets. And I'm 12, 13 years sober. Things like that shouldn't happen, right? Normal living. And I ran in the house and I said, Sally, honey, what's wrong? What happened? She said, oh, nothing. She says, nothing happened. She says, Kyle just forgot to pay his cocaine bill. I says, oh, is that all? Normal living, right? These things happen to us. Well, that daughter of mine has found Alcoholics Anonymous, and she goes to meetings in Bozeman, in Ennis, Montana, and lives in Pony, Montana. She's doing fantastic. She didn't have to die, and she laid in the hospital for 3 months, almost in death, because the guys that she started to marry, or thought she was going to marry, turned her car over and damn near killed her. So, we have to learn how to live in adversity. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have learned that. I have learned how to become a part of daily living. I've had many other things that, are not conducive to happiness happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I got to tell you something. I am happy. I am comfortable today. Because when those things come into my life, I do the thing that I've learned from you old-time people that have been around here that taught me, my sponsor. I pick up the phone and I call my sponsor immediately. And I say, this is how I feel. And then this is what's happened. And this is what I've done. And lots of times it isn't right. Because I'm certainly not perfect. And I take a quick 10th step with him, and he says, write about it. And I start writing about it. And I send it to him, now that I'm not in the city where he lives. And we communicate about it. And I go to meetings. And I try to find some guy that I kind of like and identify with in that meeting, because I travel the whole United States and Europe today. And I go to meetings in a different city almost every other night. And it's uncomfortable, but I try to make it comfortable because I find that old timer and I get next to him. And then I find the newest person in the room and I get next to them. You know, and this is what this program's all about. You know, I carry the message, and the message is carried to me. And when the message is carried to me by the old timer, I can carry the message to the newcomer. And that's just what happens. When I was 2 years on this program, I wanted to run, and I wanted to run fast. Because I felt uncomfortable, my back hurt in those meetings, and those speakers were terrible, and what the heck did those first 100 drunks know about writing a book? I mean, it was, you know, had all the negatives just hit me all of a sudden. I'm sure that if you've been around long enough, you'll know that that's what happens to us. We get complacent, I believe. And we want what we want when we want it now, and it isn't coming now. And I got to tell you that if you come around long enough, it will come now. Anyway, I went to my sponsor, thank God. I picked up the phone. He gave me a dime when I first was sober. And he says, put it way down in the wallet, way down in here. He says, if you ever need to call me or need to get drunk, he says, call me and you got a dime. And I thought that was a dumb thing. But I tell you something, when it happened, when I wanted to run, I wanted to just leave and get the hell away from all of you nutty people. I picked that dime out of my wallet and I called him and I said, Clancy, I said, I just want to run. I said, I just want to get away from you. I hate you, and I hate the speakers, and I hate AA, and it's not working, and I'm not comfortable, and I was on my 4th job, and, you know, things were just bad. And he says, that's all right. He says, just come down and have 1 cup of coffee before you go. And like, those old-timers, they know what to say, don't they, you know? If they'd have said 2 cups of coffee, I'd have told them to go to hell, you know? But I went down and had 1 cup of coffee or 2 or a dozen, and I said, you know, I just want to get away. I really don't know if I'm an alcoholic or not. I just can't get comfortable. I can't get successful. He says, well, before you do all that, he says, why don't you take the 3rd step? And I said, I told you I would never take the 3rd step when I got here, and you said it was all right. Because my dad died when I was 9. I turned God off, and I didn't want to ever believe in God, ever, ever, ever. He says, but if you remember, he says, I told you to put the 3rd step up on a shelf, and someday you might reach for it. And I thought, yeah, isn't that stupid? Isn't that kindergarten stuff? You shelf up there and reach for it, you know? What a dumb thing, you know? But when he said it that moment, I thought, yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe I should try. Okay, I said, you're so damn smart. You've been around this program 9, 10, 12 years. I said, you tell me how to take the 3rd step, because I don't know how. And I didn't. He says, well, I'll tell you what you do. He says, I can't tell you how to take the 3rd step. He says, you have to try to take the 3rd step in your own way. And if you try hard enough, it'll come. In its time, not my time, and not your individual selfish time. I thought, God, that makes kind of sense. So I went home. The next day, I'm driving down the Ventura Freeway, and I got an old beat-up truck. It was only a year and a half old, but it was alcoholic. You know, it had the bumpers were wired up. You know, it had a dents in it all over. But I never hit anything. You know, people hit me, right? And I had a German Shepherd dog, you know, in the back. You know, all alcoholics have a German Shepherd dog. You know. And I'm driving down the freeway, and I'm saying, now, how can I turn my life over? Because it's God that I don't understand, I don't care about. And I'm talking to myself, and the guy looks over me on the freeway. You know, he starts laughing. And I, you know, every time I see somebody talking to themselves, the guy's got to be in AA, right? Anyway, I went home that night because it came to me in a way that I am so grateful. It came to me in a way that has made sense to me. And I think the 3rd step has to make sense to us before we can take it. And what it was is, why don't you just accept the seemingly bad things that happen to you as well as the good things that's necessary for your growth, you big dumb Swede. And I kicked that around all day, and I went home that night, and I put it in the form of a prayer, and I said, Dear God, as I understand, and I wasn't saying any prayers at that time, but I said, Dear God, as I understand, why don't you help me to accept the seemingly bad things that happen to you as well as the good things that's necessary for my growth. And I made a decision that I would say that every morning for a while just to see what happened. 2 weeks later, I was in a nest in the San Fernando Valley, and I had tremendous pains engulf my heart, and I was having a heart attack. I was dying, folks. Now, that's seemingly bad, right? And I really thought I was going to die because my dad died at 38, my cousin died at 36, and my other uncle died at 38. All of, problems, heart problems and brain problems. And I'm in the ambulance, and I'm going to the hospital, and the siren's screaming, and the sweat's rolling off of me. And I'm dying. And I wake up, and I said, Dear God, as I understand, please help me accept the seemingly bad things. What am I saying that for? And I pass out. And I woke up, and I pass out. And I get to the hospital, and they wheel me into the hospital. And I'm sweating, and I'm dying, and the pain is just engulfing me. It's just something terrible. And 4 days later, I get out of the hospital, folks, and on the medical report it said, obesity and irritable bowels, period. But I said that prayer over and over again. And that daughter was in that hospital for 3 months, and I said that prayer over and over again. And with my son, and with my wife, and with myself, I pray every night and every morning. And the prayer is, Dear God, as I understand, please help me to accept the seemingly bad things that happen to me as well as the good things as necessary for my growth. And I have come to believe in a power greater than myself. And that power is not really any one thing. That power seems to be a grace of God, as I understand God. And I don't know who God is. The reason I call him God is because you call him God. It doesn't matter who God is. It doesn't matter who that power greater than ourselves is. What matters is that we place ourselves in a position to have the things happen to us in this normal way of life that we get restored to in Alcoholics Anonymous that cause us to live comfortable one day at a time, so we can be available for that new man that is too sick, or that new woman that is too sick, that doesn't know what we have. We are the greatest and most luckiest people in the world, we members of Alcoholics Anonymous, because there is no way that I could be standing up here in front of you and tell you that I feel good and I feel whole and that I have a disease called alcoholism, which is threefold: physical, mental, and spiritual, and that I try one day at a time to adhere to the principles of this program. And I don't always do that because I'm not perfect. I'm one of those normal people that are try and strive for perfection, yet that is imperfect, that my ego gets in the way once in a while. My sense of well-being gets destroyed every once in a while. But I have a place to go, I have a place to go like this. It's nice to see all the people that Sally and I know, and Sally and I have been with on trips and meetings and places all over the United States. It's good to see all of you. And I hope that we can see you again soon. And I hope that you're sober. And I hope that you're a member of AA in good standing and Al-Anon in good standing, because this is a family disease. Thank you very much.